Good evening and welcome to the Duneland Exchange Club membership meeting. My name is Lorelei Weimer and I am the president of the Duneland Exchange Club. The Exchange Club is a local service club that is made up of dedicated men and women who volunteer their time to make a difference in their communities. One of the things we focus on is prevention of child abuse awareness. And tonight we have three guest speakers who will be talking about this topic. We have Judge Mary DeBoer, who is the Porter County Circuit Court Judge. We have Porter County Prosecutor Gary Germann, and we have Denise Koebcke, who is the CEO and president of the Caring Place. So please welcome our speakers, Mary, Denise, and Gary.
Mary DeBoer. I am the Porter County Circuit Court Judge. I'm married to my husband, David, who we are getting close to our 30th anniversary. That's Harry behind me. We have a daughter, Lindsay, who's 24 years old. We have two grown daughters who live on the East Coast, and one grandchild who's 7 years old now. So I have been in the Porter County Judiciary now since 2011. I started out working as a magistrate in Porter Superior Court 1, and in that capacity, I mainly did domestic relations cases or divorces. So I definitely had my hand in a lot of families. We have two courts that divide up every divorce that is filed in Porter County, and so I handled half of them, and Magistrate Hardwick handled the other half. And so the family dynamic has always been something on my radar and super important. Dividing up, your pots and pans kind of falls to the bottom of the priority list when you're talking about where kids should go and who's if there's a better parent between the two. So my focus has for a very long time been on just trying to make sure that families are solid. And for me, the hard part with child abuse is that I have to always be very careful and balance in that capacity. I always had to be very careful and balance out whether people were using that as a tool to gain an advantage in a custody battle. And people start accusing each other of all kinds of things. So then if I had some suspicions or people started pulling out the child abuse card and obviously sexual abuse of any children or anything like that, I was able to appoint a guardian ad litem to get involved in the case and to investigate and talk to both sides, talk to teachers and counselors and family members and neighbors and whatever, to try to get a better perspective of the family dynamic and present that to the court with recommendations and their impressions about this family. That was my tool to be able to kind of wheedle my way in a little bit and make sure I was taking into consideration people's situations and the children's situations and doing what was best for those kids. In this capacity as a circuit court judge now, I do civil matters, car accidents and medical malpractice and things like that. But I also have 1/3 of the higher felony criminal cases. And of those, we have batteries and child molestings and, different crimes. I mean, even, homicides and stuff like that related to the abuse of children. So that's something that I'm working through. Gary and I, are in the same team as far as trying to pursue it from the beginning to the end of the case. I've got some very competent prosecutors and public defenders who work in my court on these types of cases, but it has changed my ability to kind of get more involved in things. Now my role is not to wheedle my way in, it's to just stay put, because when you're talking about somebody's constitutional rights and their liberties, for many, many years of imprisonment that they may be facing, I have to be objective, and I can't be getting involved in things, and I can't make calls that, to have people investigate things like I could in the family court perspective. That's one aspect of the things that I do. My other, the other love of my life in this job is overseeing the whole juvenile, all the juvenile cases that are filed in Porter County, and those are all the cases that occur out at our Juvenile Services Center on Highway 2. Cases that get filed, and though I have a magistrate who handles those, and that's really where I think and I'm going to throw this out there to your club, Magistrate Mulligan, Kristen Mulligan, handles all of the juvenile cases, and she is the one who oversees the Department of Child Service cases involving children. So my involvement comes into play when an adult has been charged with a crime involving, like in this case, I'll be talking about cases involving crimes against children, for example. Her involvement as the juvenile magistrate will get kicked in when DCS files a case in front of her and says, we are so scared for these kids that we have to remove these kids. And, you know, there are a variety of reasons why a child might be removed from the home, some of which can be physical and sexual abuse, but other things such as, you know, neglect, or they're born with drugs in their systems, or different things like that. So she would be a resource. And she also was worked for DCS for 10 years. And so she's just got a lot of perspective on the whole abuse aspect of things too. So she may be an interesting speaker for you to talk through things with as well. But she handles juvenile delinquency and the CHINS cases, their child in need of services. So those are the DCS cases, and termination of parental rights and that kind of thing. So those are the umbrella, the umbrella over the things that I preside over. I think Gary and Denise are going to have a lot more hands-on perspective than I do. I come into the picture after Gary does all of his good stuff and brings a case to me. My involvement begins when a criminal charge has been filed, and I review those charges. He's going to probably talk to you about investigating and reporting and all that good stuff. But I wouldn't be involved if he didn't present the court with a criminal information. And so I review the charges, and really my role at that point is to just make sure that I move the case forward in a manner that's consistent with the law and the constitutions of Indiana and the United States, so that people have, you know, the defendant has their right to the fair trial, and that I'm allowing them to potentially post a bond and different things like that. I see those cases through once I get the charges. So I think it'd be more interesting for you if I just kind of leave it at that. We can talk about the setting of a bond. We can talk about, I think one of the interesting things for the court is if a person has been charged with a crime involving children, there are aggravating factors that I can look at that could increase a defendant's sentence, such as the victim of the offense was less than 12 years old at the time the person committed the offense. That is something that I can consider an aggravator that could potentially increase that defendant's sentence. Also, knowingly committing the offense in the presence or within the hearing of a child or an individual who's less than 18 years of age at the time the offense was committed, and is not the victim even. So even doing a crime in the presence of a child or someone under 18 could increase a defendant's sentence. Also, protective orders and no contact orders, that's something that I am very much involved with. When a person has been charged with a crime of violence, I normally will not set a bond on that case until I can see that individual in person, so I can go through the charges and the rights and penalties of the involved with the charges, but so that I can also look this person in the eye and read through the no contact order and make sure that that individual knows you can't go anywhere near, you can't talk, you can't think, you can't communicate with this person, you can't smoke signal, you can't have your friend communicate with this person, you can't engage on, refer to this person on social media, all that stuff that I can go through. and the violation of a no contact order could land that defendant back in the Porter County Jail for the duration of his case. There are also things that I'm sure you guys have heard of, protective orders. When people come in and file a petition for an order for protection, I'll review those and determine whether a protective order should be issued. And family violence is obviously one of those things, or that you've been placed in fear of you're being harmed or something. There's also that you have been sexually assaulted, and parents can do it on behalf of their children. They could do it on behalf of themselves and include children. So there are many different ways that I can review a petition for a protective order, and there are a multitude of different things that I can order if I decide that I want to grant one because I feel that it's appropriate. The violation of a protective order then would bring it potentially back into Gary's arena again, because the violation of a protective order, and a protective order is a civil order, actually becomes a criminal matter. It can be considered invasion of privacy, and it is a Class B misdemeanor, and it can have higher criminal denominations depending if this person has violated or been convicted of violating no protective orders or no contact orders in the past. So those are some different ways that I get involved. What else? Like when I sentence somebody, say that there's a person who's been charged with a crime of violence against a child, and I see that case through to the point where the defendant approaches the court and says, I would like to file a plea agreement. I will, have a hearing on that. I will go through all the constitutional rights. You understand what you're waiving by entering into this plea agreement. You're giving up the right to have a trial and to have this appealed and all these different things. But one of the big things is I have to make sure that that defendant establishes what we call a factual basis, so that that person is admitting, yes, I violated this criminal code by doing X, Y, and Z. So it is their admission of guilt. And I mean, I've had people that, in fact, I just read a sentencing order today, or a pre-sentence investigation order, where somebody said, well, I didn't do it, I just don't want to go to trial. So I'm going to have a little chat with that person when I get into court, because I can't accept a plea of guilty if the person goes, well, I did it, but not really. You have to have them, they have to establish that they did in fact do that, which then triggers, in domestic violence cases, a domestic violence determination. So I have to make a determination of that on the record. I enter a form. That form gets put into the national database, and it precludes that person from having weapons and different things like that. So there's a lot of different nuances for me. I don't feel like I'm the super exciting person of this, and that's why I thought, Lorelei, when you asked me to do it, I'm kind of the tail end of the caboose. Denise is way more like right in the throes of all the, anxiety, and then throughout the process. And Gary's the big hero that swoops in and investigates and files charges. And, I'm just kind of the girl that sits there and makes sure things keep moving. So, that's kind of, those are kind of some of my roles. On the outside, one of the things, every judge has different duties that we do in the community as well. And one of mine is I am one of the judicial liaisons for the Mayor's Commission against Domestic and Family Violence in Valpo. So every month I have a Zoom meeting. Right now we're doing Zoom. And we just invite all the different, it's multidisciplinary things. So probation, police, caring place, family house, all these different entities that can come, prosecutors and defense attorneys and whoever, and we can kind of share concerns, that clerk's office, even because of protective orders, we can share concerns. These are some things that we're having problems with. Are you guys finding this being an issue? And kind of talk through things as a group so that we can improve how things are going in that regard. So that's kind of a summary of my involvement in the process at this point.
Well, I think, Mary, you've done a great job of really getting us an understanding, because that's what we need to know is, we're on the front end doing the body safety. And then if
Right.
somebody comes forward, they go to Dunebrook, and then the whole process starts from there. And knowing that Gary's a part of that, Denise could be a part of that. So what I'll do now is, Gary, she's referenced you are the hero, is what Mary said. So Gary, we're going to go ahead and highlight you and kind of give your perspective of what you do. Something to add that. So you're up, Gary. And Gary, if you could just give a little bit of background of your background. And I will tell you, I'm very impressed about what you do in terms of basketball. And if you want to make sure you tell everybody that.
No, I'm not mentioning that. Or sees me shooting and running all the time. Well, first of all, I'm anything but a hero. That's for sure. I actually grew up in Evansville and then made my way to Purdue, graduated from Purdue, and then did my law school at Valparaiso University. My wife, Beth, and I, believe it or not, will be married 50 years in December. I don't know how she made it that far. We have 4 children, and I have 8 and 2/3 grandchildren. What I tell everybody every time I get a chance to talk is how much I love my job. I love what I do. I love my staff. They're great. We always say, we're a team, but the word I like to use is that we're a family. I was not always a prosecuting attorney, although I started out that way. I was elected and served the first time from 1978 to 1982. And then for about 36 years, I was primarily a criminal defense lawyer and had an office in Portage, and then was elected in 2018 and just kind of came back to the other side, by the way. And it's been kind of an unusual advantage for me because I feel like I have the other team's playbook and that I kind of anticipate or can anticipate what's going to happen next before they even, the words are even out of the defense lawyer's mouth. We see neglect at multiple levels. When I was actually getting ready for this, Judge, I thought about educational neglect and how important it is for parents to send their children to school. And believe it or not, the rate that children are absent or tardy is just amazing in our county. And statistically, for the kids who don't go to school, there's a huge percentage of those that will end up in prison by the time that they're 20 or 21. And it's not necessarily the educational part that they're missing, it's the social part, which again, I think a lot of kids have been compromised by not being able to go to school because of the pandemic. And I think we're going to see maybe some of the impact of that because of the social, the impact of not having just friends around and being able to hang out and that type of thing. Which again, I think a lot of this, when I look at these cases, comes back to parenting and how kids are parented. Alcohol to me is a huge thing. I'm not in favor of parents drinking in front of their children. I'm not in favor of parents smoking pot in front of their children or using any types of drugs in front of their children. It's sort of the kids will do what they see and not what the parents say. There obviously are much more serious cases that we deal with, unfortunately, on a regular basis. And Judge DeBoer touched on some of those. Those are the child molesting cases. We have child exploitation cases, child pornography statutes, child solicitation, child seduction, sexual misconduct with a minor, all types of different crimes that we review. And if we, I guess I should touch upon the screening process, Lorelei. If a case comes to us and there's an allegation of child molesting, child pornography, whatever it is, that doesn't necessarily mean that we file it. The view I take is that I want to fast forward to see what a trial looks like. So that if we file a case, I want to be able to say that we've given ourselves a pretty good chance of winning that case if it goes to trial. So that screening process is really important for us because most of these are going to end up going to trial because the stakes are so high. If it's a level 1 child molesting case, that person, if convicted, could be facing anywhere from 20 to 50 years. If it's credit restricted, if it's not, it's 20 to 40 years. So there's a lot at stake in these cases. And so the screening process does a couple things. It gives us a chance to make sure that we're giving ourselves a good chance to win a trial. It also helps us determine and to make sure the best we can that we're not prosecuting somebody who is actually innocent of the crime. I told Lorelei I'm much better at answering questions about these things. So, I hope there's time at the end for lots of questions. The screening process is really interesting and very difficult because there are so many factors that go into to evaluating the credibility of, let's say, an 8-year-old. We don't know necessarily how they're going to hold up when the trial commences. They can be fine when we're talking with them. They can be fine if their deposition is taken, but all of a sudden they get into court and they don't talk. They don't answer. They change their answers. So there's a lot of unknowns. Most cases like this do not have physical evidence. I think statistically only 15% of cases of child molesting cases, for example, have physical evidence. So that means no eyewitnesses, 2 people in a room, and the weight of the conviction is going to rest almost exclusively with a child. So those are huge hurdles to overcome. And when I say we're not heroes, that's really the case, because there are a lot of cases that we do not file, and we're not really looked upon favorably for that. But it becomes a question of managing our resources. Judge DeBoer actually handles more than a third of these kinds of cases for some reasons. But yeah, so we have to be very conscious of the resources that we have, and we have to use those wisely. And it's super important that we be able to win a case once it's filed. I work with Homeland Security because it is amazing now the growth of child pornography. It is super pervasive, and it can be anybody. It's in a form of addiction, of course. There are people in Porter County who are just looking at pornography. They are producing it, and that's very hard to investigate, but it is going on in Porter County. Believe it or not, we are involved in, at times, human and child trafficking that is taking place in Porter County. It's not super prevalent right now, but we're on the edge, of course, of Chicago, and those kinds of things are in fact happening in Porter County. We in the prosecutor's office do not have, in my judgment, a huge impact on preventing child abuse because we're kind of reactive. Report is made, the police conduct an investigation, and the case is then presented to us for its review. It's too late. Whatever's happened has happened, and now we're just reacting to the case report and so on. It's the most difficult decision that we make. I think statistically too, there aren't that many cases where there's that stranger danger. It's almost like 93 to 95% of those serious child abuse, child neglect cases, child molesting cases, they are not perpetrated by strangers. They're perpetrated either by parents or by acquaintances of the families or other family members. It could be aunts, uncles, grandmothers, grandfathers, very, very close. And of course, that makes it even more difficult to reveal. Rarely are these reported instantaneously when something has happened. If we look at Dunebrook interviews, they're talking about something that happened that maybe months before, and the child is now, for whatever reason, making that report, and we're reacting to a delayed reporting. That, of course, affects the absence or presence of physical evidence. It's hard to go back and investigate a scene when something happened a year ago. That evidence is basically lost forever. So I guess from my perspective, it's sort of a highlighting of just how difficult these cases are to, one, investigate properly, and to actually prosecute. There are red flags for us too. Judge DeBoer sort of alluded to that when she was a magistrate. When parents start to use children as pawns in a war between them, and accusations of child abuse, typically child molesting, all of a sudden arise when there is a child custody matter that is now an issue between parents. I know, hard to believe, it's amazing, but there are times when parents will use children to say things or to coach them, to convince them to say things that didn't happen, things that are not true, and so on. So it's super difficult. We see cases of when there is a fight between parents. To me, there's the offshoot of that. If the children are present, to me, that's a form of abuse. If children are present during a domestic battery, that does elevate what would otherwise be a misdemeanor to a felony, and that's why. It's a traumatic event for the children when the parents are fighting, and I don't mean just arguing, but knockdown, drag out fights, and people being stabbed, bottles being cracked over people's heads, people being punched, and so on. A lot of times I think we don't see the impact of that kind of abuse until later on, because the children, they suffer from depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder later in life. Those types of things then lead to the use of drugs. When I'm looking at a drug case, I'm kind of looking at, what's behind it. What happened to this person, maybe as a child, that has now, sort of led to their initial use of, let's say, heroin, and now, of course, they have that addiction. So there's long-term effects of child abuse, child neglect, arguing in front of your kids, drinking in front of your kids, smoking pot in front of your kids, your children, and that type of thing. It's, as I said, I can't say often enough how difficult it is. It really ticks me off, Judge, that there are people who just don't send their kids to school, as I said earlier. It's pretty simple. You get them dressed, you feed them, you put them on the bus, and off they go.
Well, thank you too, because I didn't even mention the truancy court, which we created because of the whole aspect of that, because that is a precursor to juvenile delinquency, and that's a precursor to adult criminality. So, yeah,
absolutely. It's just sort of a block in a building block to deeper trouble for these. They're just kids. They're tiny little things, and they don't have a say in it. That type of thing. My parents were not my friends. So rules were rules, and that type of thing. So, so I'm happy to answer questions. I can't talk about pending cases, but I can talk about, maybe what goes into these cases. The work I do with Homeland Security, they are overwhelmed. They do not have the resources to effectively investigate all the child pornography that is occurring within the boundaries of Porter County. And that, I think, is a precursor to other problems and people acting out, not just watching, but it sort of moves up the ladder to more invasive types of behaviors. One of my goals is to start a child exploitation unit where we have the equipment to be able to investigate those cases and nip some of that in the bud and protect as many children as possible. But that's in the future. It takes tons of money, but we're working on it. So with that, Lorelei, I thought I'd turn it back to you, and then I'm available to answer questions. So thank you so much.
That was great, Gary. I mean, seriously, both you and Judge Mary have given us so much information that I know that I was not aware of. And so now we're going to turn over to Denise. And Denise, I know you've got a wealth of background in terms of what you've done with children and family. I know you've done a lot with bullying and so forth. So let me turn off the spotlight from there, and then we're going to turn it on to you. And then Denise, I should be set up where you can just share the screen. If not, I can make you a co-host.
All right. Well, I thought after following Mary and Gary, and it's an evening and toward the end of the week, I may need some visuals just to keep all of you interested. So I will tell you just really quickly that as Lorelai alluded to, and you probably read, my entire career has been spent advocating for kids, first as an educator. So I have experienced, the frustration that Gary was just exuding. I'm sitting here reliving my years in the classroom and teaching and working with some really at-risk kids, and just it's never their fault. It's always come from the adult issues. I have 2 children of my own. My son graduates from Purdue here next month. Hooray, has a job already. That's a good thing. And my daughter graduates from Ivy Tech Dental Assisting School. She's 2 years younger, so she's graduating with a dental assisting certificate, and then she will go on to dental hygiene. And I've been in education and the bullying. I've done educational consulting in the area of bullying because there were so many issues with kids that we just weren't addressing. So they would come and say, what do we do about this? And I felt obligated to find a solution. So worked with kids in that. That's how I first connected with the Caring Place. And then when Amanda Bach was killed, Portage teen was killed from teen dating violence, the Caring Place asked me to be on that Youth Dating Violence Prevention Task Force. So that's how, from that point forward, I've worked for the Caring Place, and now I ended up in this position. But it was because of my position as a parent, mostly, that I was drawn to that story and to trying to figure out what we could do as a community about dating violence prevention and that sort of thing. So I am going to try to share my screen so that you don't have to just hear me talking all the time, and tell you a little bit about what the Caring Place does, because we're in the front line. We get all of this stuff before it gets to Gary, before it gets to Mary. And the sad thing is that we get just a tiny portion of it ever comes to us, which is why we are really adamant about going out into the community. And let's see, I even have a video for you, so I'll try and talk really fast so we can get to the video. All right, are you seeing my screen, folks?
Yes.
Awesome. Let me hide this floating meeting controls. Okay, so the Caring Place, we are the only 24-hour crisis line and emergency shelter in Porter County, but we serve the region. We serve Lake County, Porter County, and Stark County, and a lot of people don't know that. Our mission, I think everybody knows us for providing emergency shelter. Okay, that is our most vital service. But beyond that, because, as I mentioned, only a tiny portion of people who need our services ever make their way to shelter, ever. The second part of our mission is advocacy and education and awareness, and trying to empower people to build more supportive, respectful, compassionate relationships, because it starts in the adults and it's just a domino effect from there. So our vision, it's a big vision, a community free from domestic violence in which all people engage in healthy relationships. But here's the key, and this is why you guys are so important. And these panels are so important, because that can only happen if it's supported by a society that is committed to nurturing respect and nonviolence across the board, okay? What happens so often is that we put these issues in silos, okay? There's drug abuse over here, there's pornography over here, there's violence, there's bullying, there's sexual assault, whatever, but it's all intertwined. Okay, all of those things are interconnected in so many ways. So we can't solve any of those issues unless we address all of those issues as a community. In 2020, the Caring Place answered over 2,354 crisis calls. And going back to 2017, it was 1,500 calls. In 2019, it was 2,078. And as you can see, we keep going up. Okay. I think so many of us have inaccurate perceptions of who is infected by domestic violence. You know, it's those people, or it's a certain type of person, and it's just not accurate. Truly, I can tell you now better than ever, and I knew this as an educator because I worked with kids at every end of the socioeconomic strata and saw domestic violence and all of these issues in every level all the time. Okay, so we have a certain view of who it might be, but I think a lot of times we really don't understand that elder abuse is on the rise. According to the CDC, 1 in 10 of those over 60 who live at home are facing some sort of elder abuse. Intimate partner violence, and that's domestic violence, okay? In Indiana specifically, 42.5% of women and 28% of men. People often don't realize that men are experiencing these same sorts of things from a violent woman or a violent man. I've had students, former students, who have been nearly killed by male students who have been in a situation like this. And if you look at those numbers, they are higher than the national average. I think the national numbers are somewhere around 26% of women and 15 to 17% of men. So if you look at that, our Indiana numbers are higher. Our Indiana numbers of teen dating violence and teen suicide, and those things are higher as well. And that's why we as a community, we're so important if we're going to try and nip some of that and break that cycle. Family violence, and I think Gary and Mary were both talking about this. 1 in 15 children in the U.S. are exposed to intimate partner violence every year. And 90% of those are actual eyewitnesses, not just hearing it, but actually seeing it. And if you look at the violence above, okay, specifically for Indiana, it's pretty clear that our rates are more than 1 in 15 children. You know, we're above the national average. The LGBTQ community also experiences this in higher rates. Teen dating violence, 1 in 3 high school students experience some sort of teen dating violence. But the tricky thing here is that most parents don't think it's a problem. You know, we're pretty clueless. And even though my kids were involved in the Amanda Forum, both my teenagers were involved in the Amanda Forum, we had conversations about dating violence, domestic violence, and all of those sorts of things. It did not insulate them or protect them from running into people who were seeking relationships with them who were toxic and could have ended up violent, you know? So how do we deal with those sorts of things? Child abuse, domestic violence, intimate partner violence, you know, mental health issues, self-harming behaviors, suicide, bullying, intolerance, all of those things are all interconnected in a domino effect. And so as a community, anytime that we as a community contribute to helping our neighbors, you know, as the Duneland Exchange Club does with Dunebrook, it's really a contribution that positively impacts all of us in the community, because as a community, we're only as safe as our neighbors, you know, as our students, as our kids' friends. So that investment that we all make as a community helps all of us as well. You know, it's an investment in our own safety. And that's something I think the more we talk about it, the more people will understand that you don't want to just look the other way. So our services at the Caring Place, obviously we provide safe shelter, victim advocacy, you know, protective orders. We talked a lot about no contact orders or protective orders. We have our advocates who will help community clients or shelter clients actually in shelter, file protective orders, because it's tricky, especially if you are in a crisis situation and you're already traumatized. We have a retired judge who will be here in 4 minutes flat if we need him to help our advocates and our clients fill out those protective orders in such a way that they won't get thrown out. And then all of these other pieces are things that we do. And I want you to really look at the community awareness and prevention and the youth outreach, because that's something we are, if you've seen our newsletters, and if not, get on our mailing list. We have a Let's Start Talking campaign, because the more panels like this and the more that we talk to each other about these issues, the more as a community we can support our neighbors and support our family members and help build hope, help people develop the hope that cycles can be broken. You can't give up. If you look at all of those issues, it's pretty overwhelming, because you think, where do I even start? But every step, every piece of hope you give someone that, hey, those cycles can be broken. You can speak your truth. Patterns can be changed. There are better days. And then we provide the help from dedicated caseworkers and advocates, volunteers. We have an amazing, generous community of donors, because as a nonprofit, every year we're begging for money, particularly now. We're not making money. We do all of our services free. Food, we feed everybody, we provide transportation. We have to keep a 48-bed shelter running. So all of the donors and the volunteers are all part of that circle of support and that help, and all of the strength that comes from breaking that silence. It is so incredibly empowering for someone to finally be able to speak their truth to an advocate, to someone who is just there to be on their side and to listen, and then to help them grow and find a way forward. So that's our Let's Start Talking campaign. What can we do, each of us as community members? Keep lines of communication open. Really, there are probably people in your family right now, or your neighbors, who are experiencing DV or some sort of issue, some family issue that they'll never talk about because people are afraid, people are embarrassed. There's a shame, there's a stigma to it. So if we can find a way as community members, as friends, as neighbors, as family, to listen without judgment, so that perhaps we can help people find resources. And then, of course, continue to support agencies like ours and Dunebrook and those that are out there actively seeking to create a difference. And the video I really want to end with, it's just powerful, I think, because it does a really good job of helping us understand that this can happen anywhere to any one of us. And is really what, drew me to work with dating violence prevention with Caring Place. And it also leaves a message of hope. There's a way forward. There are things we can do to have an impact. So hopefully you'll be able to hear this well.
We all thought it couldn't happen here. That you only see tragedies like this on the news. Until we made the news.
60 years behind bars. That's the sentence for an Indiana man accused of murdering his ex. Tonight, a sad end to the search for a missing teen from North.
With an entire lifetime ahead of her, at the age of 19, local teen Amanda Bopp was tragically taken from us as a result of teen dating violence.
It's crazy to think that she's not here with us anymore and that she'll never be a college grad, an aunt, she'll never be a wife and mother. All those things in life that we wish to experience, we just have her memory.
Our community mourned this loss. Some lit candles, many shed tears, and we chose to learn. We learned that we are not alone in our loss. Many communities across the nation have lost their sons and daughters. Too many candles have been lit, and too many tears have been shed.
Lauren was missing on the evening of July 3rd, 2011. Her car was found. A friend of hers, in walking a dog, noticed her car on the beach. Then we became quite concerned that something was very wrong. Word came to the police that a body had been found across town in the marsh. We're told that it was likely that it was she, and I made plans to identify her the next day, and we just huddled together and shared the misery of that. That's what sort of catapulted me into trying to ponder the issues of where can it possibly come from and what can we possibly do to prevent it.
So right here, right now, we choose to take action by creating a movement, the Amanda Forum. Our goal is simple. We are boldly talking about teen dating violence. We are raising awareness of breakup violence. We are empowering youth to build healthy relationships.
Grisly and horrible and painful as these losses are, the positive side is that our country progresses in terms of identifying pain and injustice and taking steps to correct it. That can give us hope.
I don't know if people actually come into this work saying, I want to stop dating violence. I want to stop domestic violence. A lot of us have come into this work because there's a personal connection to it.
I grew up in a home where there was domestic violence, and so growing up I saw that. It always made me want to get involved and make sure that raise awareness for the issue and make sure that others didn't have to go through that, or that they were able to recognize the signs of abuse, not end up in unhealthy or abusive situations.
But again and again, if you look at the bigger patterns, boys and men have come to act out violently, and we need to ask why.
Oftentimes we fast forward right into, this is what abuse looks like. This is what you need to look out for. But a lot of that discussion has to happen simultaneously with, this is what a healthy relationship looks like. This is what you deserve. This is how you should communicate that this is what I expect and this is what I want.
Join us in spreading the word. Real love doesn't hurt. I want to feel valued. I want a partner who has compassion. I want someone who will listen when I speak, who is confident and strong. I deserve someone who will keep his word, someone who is reliable. I deserve someone who is genuine and truly cares about me. I want someone who really knows me, who makes me feel unforgettable.
Okay, so I guess when we listen to all this, we listen to Judge Mary and we listen to Gary and we talk about domestic violence and child abuse and all those things. If you look at that big picture of social issues, it really is easy to give up. I mean, it seems so overwhelming. How can we make a difference? And we have to be really careful to keep giving our kids hope because our kids see this. Okay. And so this is one time when instead of looking at the big picture, we need to kind of narrow down and look at where can I make a difference? You know, where can I help fix this problem and create some hope and some strength and empower some growth and emotional intelligence among kids and lead them forward, you know, to help them grow as human beings and develop that social emotional intelligence that they need to learn in schools. You know, and that's part of the truancy sort of thing as well. That's one of the problems with kids not getting to school or people not sending kids to school because then they don't learn that social emotional health and those relationship skills that they need to have healthy relationships. And we need to keep telling folks what to do, not just what not to do, whether it's bullying or, you know, relationships. It's what does a healthy relationship look like, you know, instead of this is bad. Okay, so what's good? You know, what do we do? How do we move forward? Okay, I'm done.
Well, thank you, Denise. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight Gary and Mary, and we're going to go ahead and have questions. So one of the questions, and I'll start off with one of the questions, and anyone can answer this. We talk about a lot of help for the victims and so forth, but if there was awareness, if somebody's like, so I guess my question is, if somebody's like starting to realize that they want to sexually abuse a child, and they do have a little bit of that, this is not right, and I need help. Where does somebody go? Or if somebody's has a desire to hit somebody and they want to do domestic violence, but all of a sudden there is that little bell that goes off, and that's what you're always hoping for, and they realize they have a problem. Are there places for these folks to go and get help to try to stop this in advance? Because I don't know if we talk about that a lot, in terms of where people would go for anger management, or I have an issue with pornography, or even recognizing that pornography can lead to so many worse things. And where do you go to get that help? I just didn't know if those resources are available in our area.
I can tell you that one of the things, sorry, Mary, one of the things that people who have experienced domestic violence talk about when you survey them is that they want a less punitive approach to their abusers, and they want more restorative practices and other opportunities for those people to learn and grow and develop new habits. So I think your question is a really good one. If somebody knows that they have anger management problems, and part of making it safe for people to admit that and go seek help is working on that stigma, the whole mental health stigma, and you shouldn't talk about that, and you can't go seek help because there's a stigma against seeking help like that, and you have to hide it. So there are agencies, there's Porter Stark, there are batterers programs through PACT, and even in the jails, and there are jail groups and that sort of thing. But what do you think, folks?
Well, I was going to mention the PACT. I'm part of the opioid, and Gary, you're part of that too. The opioid, we have a little task force team. It's not so much a task force anymore. Like we're going to go out and bust out, and break into houses and get opioids off it's not that. We are the multidisciplinary agencies that work together to try to come up with some programming that can help people that suffer from opioid abuse. And while we're not talking about opioids here specifically today, one of the things that came from that task force is we've received 2 different grants, one for 2019, one for 2020, and we're able to use those funds and for different things related to opioids. But one of the things that we did with that was we created a resource manual, and the point of that is to basically just cover like every conceivable issue that you could think of, and we tried to do our best with that. But if you are somebody that is homeless, where can you go for counseling, for suicide prevention, for you've got health issues, you've got parenting issues, you need whatever. I mean, like all kinds of different entities that can help with different types of issues. And so there's this manual, and I don't know, Lorelai, that's like the first time Gary and I are so on the other end of it, like we get it after it's already happened, that to me, it's almost unheard of to have somebody go, hey, and self-proclaim like I've got this issue and then go. I'm sure that happens, but I don't know specifically where we have that would do that. I mean, we've got PACT programs that, there are individuals who can probably help shuttle you to a certain entity to help you with that. That's kind of the best answer. What about you, Gary? What do you think?
Yeah, I think, as you said, we kind of we're reactive. We deal with when something's already happened. And that's kind of my approach as a prosecutor. It's meant to be restorative. One of my goals is that whatever happened doesn't happen again. Mm-hmm. So there are programs through PAC that help with that. If someone is really proactive like that, there are counselors. I agree with Denise, Porter Stark, and they'll filter whatever the issue is to the appropriate person. Not every counselor is an expert in pornography. Not everyone's an expert in heroin addiction and so on. But there are counselors that do deal with those specific issues, anger management, for example. I kind of, to me, the first resource would be Porter Stark Services, and then sort of go from there. The one factor is that a lot of families that are low socioeconomic situations, they may have the desire but don't have the financial ability to pay for private counseling, which is sort of a problem. But Porter Stark, and then of course if something does happen and a crime is charged, we have PAC. They do a great job. Anger management, thinking for a change, right? Judge DeBoer, the SAVE program, the CALM program, they do a great job there.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a good point, Judge DeBoer, is that, you were talking about the opioid crisis. And the reality is that those who experience domestic violence are at much greater risk of substance abuse as well, drugs, alcohol, self-harming behaviors, so it is all intertwined.
Okay, so now I'm going to open it up for our members. If you're on mute, just remember to unmute yourself if you have questions, and we'll just let people kind of just jump in as is. And then if you have it specifically, then just call out the name of the speaker you want to hear from. And don't everybody speak at one time.
I'm a retired teacher of 32 years, and to me, the one thing that I fought more than anything else with parents raising children was bailing out their kids when they made a mistake, whether it's forgetting homework, being accountable for not getting a project in on time, whatever. And I see that transition as they get older. I was in elementary schools most of the time. As they got older, the problem became an expectation of the child that the parent would bail them out no matter what they did. And to me, this is as serious an issue as some other things. It's sort of like the yang of child abuse. The parent would lie to protect the child. Is there anything being done to help prevent children being bailed out in schools?
Well, I guess I'm the most recent one in schools. I think teaching that growth mindset, it was something we were trying to do with Team Lead, is teach that, leadership, empathy, accountability, and discussion, and that growth mindset. If you can get that into the schools on a more regular basis, whether it's in advisory classes or that sort of thing, because all of that bailing out is covering up mistakes. Nobody wants to make a mistake because it's embarrassing, and that's been a uniquely American sort of philosophy. We did that. Everybody had to be smart, and you'd tell your kids you were smart all the time. You're so smart. But what that actually did was make a kid not want to ever make a mistake. So it was about the grade and not about what the person learned, sort of thing. It wasn't about the process. So that growth mindset, if we would get that more into our schools and teach parents how to work with kids from that angle, and not look at that and, oh, you're so smart, but man, you must have worked hard to earn that, that philosophy. It's okay to make mistakes because you learn and grow. What are you going to do different next time? What did you learn that time? But it has to start with the parents. We have to train adults to deal with their kids that way.
Well, and I think Gary said it when he said, don't be your kid's friend. There's a time for that. My daughter's 24, almost 25, and we get along so swimmingly. But, there were times, believe me, as a deputy prosecutor, having a deputy prosecutor for a mom is no fun feat for a kid growing up, because, and then as a magistrate, I'm like, if you do something, you're on the front page, that, so, but that's, I think, a good point. And honestly, sometimes in my court, I cannot believe, I'm blown away by mothers who come in and want to sit there and start talking for their kid in the middle of a court case. And I'm just like, what the heck is happening here? Like, how old are you? Like, sit down, mom. This is his problem or her problem. So it is a legitimate, it is a legitimate thing that's out there right now. And I think you're right, Denise. Just you have to start young with that and just get over ourselves, so we don't have a bunch of entitled kids that think that they can just get away with whatever and not have any accountability, because somebody will get them out of it. Yeah.
Denise read the book. It's called Mindset, didn't you, Denise?
I did. Carol Dweck. I taught it constantly, but I needed to teach it to the parents, and I tried. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like if we teach the kids now how to be parents, I think we got a better chance 15 years from now. I feel like we almost lost a generation. But to answer, the question, I'm the tough love guy. I don't care how much money the parents have. I don't care. And I will fight to keep somebody in jail if I think that's where they need to be in order to sober up, for example. They're not going to get sober if they are released and return to their same stupid friends. So I'm there to break that cycle.
Mary, I had a question. When you were in the family court and you literally saw parents pitting their kids against each other and going to the extent of doing sexual abuse that didn't exist, how do you try to get them counseling? Because that's going to be so terrible down the road that they're going to continue to do it. And my mom had a daycare for 54 years, and she saw the same thing in her daycare where they just couldn't get along, and they couldn't get along for the kids' sake. Could you interfere in that or ask for counseling under those circumstances?
Yeah, one of the things, I actually had a case where the parents, the dad was adamant, I didn't do this, and mom was, adamant that he did. And so we went ahead and had some interviews done, forensic interviews done, because we wanted to get to the bottom of it and to see. And those came back basically, coached kind of thing. In that case, obviously my whole point was I want to get to the bottom of it one way or the other. Either the parent is full of crap, and I want to know that, because that's definitely, if somebody's willing to go to those lengths to try to put themselves in a better advantage, I need to know that when I'm deciding who should have custody of these kids. Or B, this is really happening, and I need to know that too, because I don't want to put those kids with that person, so either way, we got to get to the bottom of it. So in that case, it came to light that mom had basically just concocted this thing and tried to talk her kids into it. And thank goodness kids don't keep their lies straight, and it just went all over the place, and it kind of helped us kind of unravel this thing. What I was able to do in that case, though, is implement some orders on the other end of the divorce, saying, here's what parents, you guys need to do. And I was very careful, and I don't remember exactly how I ordered mom in that case. Like, my guess is supervised parenting time for a while until I'm sure that she's not messing with those kids' heads. I can stop visitation. I can order counseling for the parents, and I have ordered counseling for the parents. I've ordered family counseling for all of them. In this case, luckily, none of the kids were really abused. So it was really just kind of trying to do counseling to mend the relationship between the kids and dad, because he was the one that kind of lost out like a year and a half of time with these kids while mom was playing this whole thing out. So yeah, absolutely. The family courts can put some counseling orders in place for the family and the kids individually and as groups.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gary, what do you do when you don't have enough evidence and you don't think you can take a person to the court, but you do think that they are abusing a child, but there's just the evidence is not there? I mean, is there a way to kind of watch the person? I mean, to me, that would be the hardest one, where you just, you think it really is happening, but there's just no way to really take it to the court.
It's horrible. I lose sleep. There's a case right now that we've kind of been working on. It's not really clear to us who the perpetrator is. We don't have enough evidence to go forward, but the case is on my mind all the time. It's horrible. especially when, you kind of feel like, yes, we have the right person, but we'll never be able to prove the case. Yeah, it's terrible. It's the some of the most difficult decisions that we have to make when we're screening those cases. And a lot of times, just the fact that someone came forward, it's enough to scare the person. So, the recidivism rate, I think, is, I guess, impacted in a good way, because the person is so scared and living on the edge. Who knows when the police are coming to get him or her. So, no, it's horrible. Hate to do it, but sometimes it just has to. The no is a really good answer for us at times. Yeah, sleepless nights, Lorelei.
I know, and that's the part that would be so difficult, very difficult, and especially when you're like, I know something's wrong, but I can't do anything about it. That's got to be so hard. Any other questions from the club members? And just remember, you're on mute, so just to unmute.
I would like to. I don't really have a question. I have a couple of comments, though. That first of all, the truancy thing. Wow, I was so glad to hear that mentioned, because I do work in a school, and I've been in a school system one way or the other for about 30 years. And it's unbelievable how much truancy has grown, and what a huge problem it is, and how many parents seriously don't think it's that big of a deal. And I would love to see the Exchange Club do some sort of a program or some kind of a campaign to help out with that problem, because like all three of you said, everything ties together. Truancy can be linked to everything from child abuse to child neglect, linked to alcoholism on the parts of the parents and stuff like that. So if any of you have any great ideas of ways that the Exchange Club could help in that specific area, I would love to hear that, and be more than willing to spread some awareness there. But my second thing is that I just appreciate you all coming and giving us such a beautiful presentation, especially the video. Thanks for making me cry. But it was all such good information. And I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to talk to our teeny tiny little group tonight.
I think I can speak on behalf of all three of us. When Gary said that he loves his job, I think he's a dirty liar, because nobody can love their job more than I do. But I honestly, we do what we're doing because we love what we're doing so much. And it's a much bigger thing than pushing cases through. And I'm sure for Gary too, keeping your desk clean isn't an option sometimes, because it just it's like drinking from a fire hose, especially after the pandemic and the backlog that's some of us are facing. And Denise has her own issues because they're not able to do their big fundraisers to raise the money that they we're all like kind of getting it from different angles, but we do it because we love it so much. We're so passionate about wanting to do right by our community and in whatever ways that we can in our little worlds, so thank you for that comment. That was very sweet of you.
Well, and I can attest to you guys, and I Denise, this is my first time meeting Denise tonight, but I first met Judge DeBoer when she was running for re-election, and I could hear your passion when you and I spoke, and you talked so much about the families and everything that you've done, and I knew that you took it personally in terms of being able to make good decisions. And then Gary, I was so appreciative this summer when we were having a lot of issues at the dunes, and the national park called us and said, we need law enforcement to really help us with what was going on. We did not expect to get all these visitors from Chicago and causing so many issues. And I was not expecting that, Gary, you were going to show up at that meeting. And that was how important. And the reason he was important, because he needed to give our sheriff permission to do the arrest. And if we arrested these folks, were we going to have the teeth behind it and do the prosecution? And Gary wanted to make sure that these officers knew that he was going to stand behind them. So that's where you just really know how much you guys care, because when we put the call out for help, you guys have come out. So I just really appreciate, to echo what Pam said, just appreciate your time this evening and spending time with us and helping us better understand what all three of you guys are doing. Before we close, I'll give each one of you another chance just to say a final closing remarks, and then we'll let you guys end your evening. So I'll start with you, Mary, then we'll go with Gary, and then we'll end with Denise.
Well, obviously, this is a hugely important topic. I'm pleased to know that there's an organization out there that's willing to devote their attention to this issue, because it's a big deal, and it's such a secretive kind of when Gary says I used to be a domestic violence prosecutor, and I mean those are the toughest cases. They pick those people on purpose. They are victims because they're little, they can't repeat things, they're not believable, they can get confused easily. I mean, as prosecutors, you don't get like fabulous choir boy victims. You get normal kids or ones with intellectual disabilities or whatever. So what you guys are doing and bringing awareness out there is very important. And I appreciate the fact that you gave me the chance to tell you a little bit about how my role impacts this, and with these two fine people as well. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Gary?
Yeah, I agree, Judge DeBoer. I'm really everyone's lawyer. So Lorelei, I'm your lawyer. So I think it's important for me as your lawyer to be available so that you can ask questions and you can hear from me. I thought, we talked about neglect, we talked about physical abuse, but we didn't talk about psychological abuse. There's a proverb that says words have the power of life and death. So I think, from a parenting standpoint, it's so important what words parents are speaking into their children. I'm the first person in our whole family to ever go to college. And it's because my parents spoke words of life in me so that I could see far beyond our economic circumstances. The third thing I wanted to share is we had a case last year. A little girl was beaten, burned, had so many broken bones, and it's even hard for me to talk about. And we hired an expert from Children's Hospital in Indianapolis to come up and testify about, all the injuries. But the lawyer that was handling the case, she was in tears most of the day in dealing with this. So, I mean, we're subjected to the emotional damage of having to deal with these cases as lawyers. And sometimes it's just impossible for us to distance ourselves from some of these horrendous things. And I thought I was going to have to take the case over from her because what's she going to do? Cry her way through the trial? But it's very, very hard on us. You only get a glimpse of really what we have to deal with sometimes on a daily basis. So those are the kinds of things that your prosecutor's office and your prosecutors are doing, and they love their jobs and they love the community, and that's why they do it.
Well, thank you. Wow. Yeah, we have no idea, have no idea. And Denise.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Judge Mary for introducing you to me, Lorelei, and you inviting me to come. I'm really honored to be here with these two fine people. I've known Gary for a very long time, and Judge Mary more recently, but have the utmost of respect for them. And I think the words, as Gary mentioned, the words you speak are important. And I think the words that our community speaks are also vitally important. And working in panels like this and working in nonprofits and organizations that serve the community speak words of hope and strength to our community and to those who need help. Seeing so many good people in the community who are willing to spend their time like this, finding ways to help their friends and neighbors, that just speaks volumes in this community. And we're very lucky to have a community full of helpers. find the helpers, and you are all helpers. So thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Well, thank you again. And, if you think of things that you think that the Duneland Exchange Club can do to add in terms of programs, and we're always open to ideas, because this is the thing that we do the most is prevention of child abuse. And we're always looking for different ways that we can, intervene. And, a lot of it's been on sexual abuse, but, we, like you said, Gary, there's the physical, and then it's the psychological that stays forever. They say bruises heal, but that emotional damage that's done, it takes years to recover from that. So I just want to thank all of you for being here. Thank you, club members, for being here.